Alright, hello. This time we're going to have a little look at jumping mechanics in GameMaker Studio 2. So let's get to it. I've done a little bit of setup this time. I have two sprites, one for the player, one for the wall, and then two objects corresponding as well. The sprites are simply just squares, as you can see there in the corners, and the objects, here the player object has a little bit of code. In the create event, I've set a move speed variable for moving left and right, and then there's just some code in here to allow us to move left and right as well. Some inputs and then collision check to bump into walls to the side of you. And in the wall object, I've got no code at all. It's simply got its sprite assigned. So let's go into the room. Let's put these objects into the room. So here's our player, and we'll put some walls in. And let's run the game and see where we're at as a starting point, and then see what we need to do to get some jumping going on here. So here we are. We're moving left and right. We're not falling down like we want to, and there's no jumping functionality. We've not built that yet, so let's do that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a force that pulls us down to the ground whenever we're in the air, so we can walk along the floor rather than floating in the air like this. So let's go into our player object, and we're going to create a couple more variables firstly in the create event. So we'll title this with vertical movement, and there's going to be three variables I'm going to create here. First one's going to be gravity. I'll call it GRV. That's going to be the force that's pulling us down to the ground. Give it a value of 0.3 for now. Next, we're going to create jump height, which is fairly self-implied. It's going to be how high we can jump. Give that a value of 7. And then the last ones, we're going to call it VSPD for vertical speed. I'll start that off at 0, and this value is going to, what's it going to do? This value is going to keep track of our current vertical force, our current vertical speed, if you will, whether we're moving up or down, and we're going to be applying this force to our y coordinate every frame. So let's start doing some coding in here then. So the first thing we're going to do is let's just title this in here as well for vertical movement, just to separate our blocks of code a little bit. And what we're going to put in here, the first thing we want to do is have ourselves pulled to the ground. So we need gravity to pull us down. So we'll say vertical speed plus equals GRV. So we're adding gravity, that force of gravity, to our current vertical speed. And then at the end of our code, much like this movement up here, we'll say y plus equals VSPD. So after we've done all of our calculations, we're going to actually apply it to our y coordinate, or y position. So if we run this code now, it's going to pull us straight down, but we're going to go straight through the wall as well. It's not going to stop just yet. We need to actually code in that collision. And it's quite simple to do. So let's just give this a little comment for gravity, and then we'll do a collision check for the floor. So we're going to use the if place meeting function for this. If place meeting x, because if we were changing x, we would be looking left and right. We don't want to do that. We're looking up and down. So we're changing our y coordinate. X plus VSPD, the reason we check that is because that's how much we're going to be moving each frame. So we want to make sure that we're not going to move into a wall. So we're checking for the wall before we've actually done the movement. I'll give this a little comment as well for commit to move. Okay, so, and then we're looking for a wall. So if place meeting, vertical speed below us is a wall, then we want to stop moving. We don't want to move through the wall. So VSPD equals 0. However, if we are 5 pixels away from the ground and we stop our vertical speed right there, we're going to be floating 5 pixels above the floor. So what we're going to do in that case is, if this returns true, if it's found a wall at VSPD value below us or above us, we're going to move as close as we can to the wall without moving through it. So we want to like line up against it, nice and smooth. We're going to say while, this time, while not place meeting. So for as long as there's not a wall at the position X, Y plus sine VSPD, which will return +1 if this is positive, or -1 if this is negative. And we're still checking for the wall. So while there's not a wall 1 pixel above or below us, let's move our Y position by 1 pixel above or below us. Sine VSPD again. And then once we've aligned right up beside the wall, we'll set our vertical speed to 0 so that this doesn't then push us through the wall. So this code here is going to allow us to now walk along the ground. There we go, lovely, nice and smooth, and we can fall off the edge here and then fall down here. Now we're stuck. So let's get some jumping mechanics in here so we can free ourselves. Okay, so next thing we want to do is create our jumping action. So in order to jump, we need 2 things to be true. We need to be on the ground and we need to be pressing the jump button. So let's assign a button for the jump button in our inputs at the top. Key jump equals keyboard check. And we'll use the space bar for this, which is VK space. And then go back down. Actually, one more thing. So while we're up here, we can also set a variable that checks whether we're on the ground or not. So we'll call it isGrounded, and that's equal to place meeting x, y plus 1, o wall. It's worth noting that +1 pixel on your y coordinate is 1 pixel below you. So as you go down, your y values increase, and as you go up, your y value decreases, which means whenever we apply our jump height, whenever we try and jump, we're going to take the jump height value away from our y coordinate, or from the vertical speed, or however we implement it. So this will return true if we're on the ground, and it will return false any other time. So now we've got our 2 conditions set up, we can just simply check if is grounded, so if we're on the ground, and key jump, we're pressing the jump button, vertical speed minus our jump height, minus equals our jump height. And that means whenever we come to here, it's going to jump. And you're going to see this is going to be a really smooth jump, because when we're in the air, the gravity is going to pull us down nice and gradually. We'll be at 0 speed at the top, and then it'll pull us down again. just like that. Lovely jump. Okay, so there's a couple ways we can alter this to try and improve it. One issue with this kind of jumping is that it doesn't feel great whenever you're running off an edge like this and you're trying to jump. There'll be a lot of times when you try and jump and you've just run off the edge, and because you're no longer on the ground, you just fall. But it doesn't feel good for the player for that to happen. A common way to fix that is to create a small buffer of time after you've left the ground that you can still jump, just so that the player feels more in control of their character. So let's look at one way of how we can achieve this little buffer to allow us to jump once we've run off that ledge. So to do this, what I'm going to do, I'm going to create another variable in here in our create event called CanJump. I'm going to set that equal to 0 for now. And the way we're going to use this is whenever we're on the ground, we'll set it to a value, for example 10, and then whenever we're not on the ground, we're going to decrease it by 1 each frame. And as long as CanJump is more than 0, we'll allow the player to jump. So we'll see how we can code that in now. So we're going to do it above this jumping action. So like I said before, if we're on the ground, we're going to set the CanJump variable to a value like 10. So if is grounded, CanJump equals 10. And while we're not on the ground, else CanJump will decrease by 1 each frame. Minus equals 1. I'll put this inside brackets as well, just to make it easier to read, perhaps. So if we're on the ground, then we're setting it to this. If we're not on the ground, we're decreasing that value until it reaches 0. This means that instead of checking if we're on the ground when we try and jump, we just need to check if CanJump is more than 0. CanJump is more than 0. Okay, so let's run this and see how that's working. Oh, I've got an error. Okay, interesting. CanJump minus equals 1. Right, so you'll see at the top here, I've just drawn the value of CanJump so we can keep track of it. You see, whenever we're in the air, okay, so you can see that whenever I've jumped now, I've gone quite high. The reason for that is because when I've jumped, CanJump is decreasing by 1 each frame, which means for 10 frames, it's applying that jump height over and over again. So I can fix this 2 ways, and how the first way to do that, to fix it, is to go into your jump action, and whenever you've jumped, set CanJump equal to 0, so it only occurs once. So that will totally fix it. We don't have to do anything else, but we're going to anyway. What we can also do is change our key jump to keyboard check pressed, which means that it will only return true 1 frame when we press down the spacebar, and then it will be false until we've let go and then press the spacebar again. So you have to manually press jump each time you want to jump. It won't just bounce you up and down and up and down. Okay, so now let's try it. Okay, so jumping, you can see whenever we're in the air, it's going down. But let's try and run off the edge, see if we can jump. We can. So there's a small buffer that we've allowed that lets us sort of run off the edge and jump. You can change the amount of grace that you're giving the player by just decreasing the value that CanJump is set to. One thing you may notice is that whenever we're running off the edge, the jump is kind of weak. It's not as powerful as this jump here. The reason that happens is because whenever we are falling off the edge here, gravity is starting to pull us down to the ground, which means that whenever we're trying to jump, it has to counter that gravity that is already built up, and then whatever is remaining is what will push us upwards. If we want to just allow the player to do a normal full jump, it's quite simple to fix. All we have to do is whenever we jump, we will reset the vertical speed to 0, and then that will allow us to have our full jump. So we'll see that in action here. And these are really simple fixes. It's just nice to see how each bit of code actually works in your game. So there we go, and you can see there the jump is much stronger. It feels a lot better now. You can change all these values depending on your game, of course, depending on how you want to feel. The last thing that we're going to do is we're going to see how we can implement a double jump mechanic. It's quite common in video games, obviously. So how we're going to do this is we're going to create another variable, just like CanJump, except we're going to call it CanDoubleJump. And we're going to set CanDoubleJump to true whenever we've jumped. And then if we double jump, it'll be false. And also, if we're on the ground, it will be false as well. Okay, so let's create the variable in the create event. CanDoubleJump equals 0. We can use 0 and 1 for true and false, or we can actually write false and true. So let's use true and false for this. Why not? So let's see. Whenever we're on the ground, so here, when on the ground, we can't double jump. We want to just do our normal jump if we're on the ground. So CanDoubleJump equals false. Once we've jumped once, here, we want CanDoubleJump to be true. So again, we'll just add it in. CanDoubleJump equals true. And then we'll do a condition if CanDoubleJump and keyJump. So if you press jump again and you can double jump, then you will basically run this code again. VSPD equals 0 and VSPD minus equal jump height, because you're just jumping again. So if CanDoubleJump and keyJump, VSPD equals 0, because you're going to reset that again. You don't have to, but I will here. VSPD minus equals jump height. One really important thing here is that, oops, let's see. So this is our double jump. One more thing we need to do is whenever we've double jumped, we're going to set CanDoubleJump to false again, because otherwise we're going to be jumping all the time. Equals false. Okay, so one important thing to note here is that this block of code for our double jump, it needs to go above our normal jump. The reason why is if we jump here and we've set double jump equals to true, in this frame, because we've pressed jump, key jump is true, And also we've just set can double jump to true. So now here, this is going to be true every single time we jump in the same frame. So it's instantly going to call this code, which is going to set can double jump to false. So it's going to be redundant really. So I'm just going to hit Control X to cut. And up here, I'll paste it there. And we'll just label it. So this is our normal jump here, and this is our double jump. So let's go into our code and see that in action. Lovely, look at that. Fantastic. Feels pretty good. Feels pretty good. All right, well, I hope that's been useful.